Did your parents reveal a secret to you once you reached adulthood? If so, what was it? That I had a much older half sister. Apparently my father had got some girl knocked up in high school. Her parents didn't like him and thought they were too young to raise a kid, so they just packed up and moved. He knew she existed, but never tried to locate her and just moved on with his life. After I was in college, the sister had contacted him and they got together. Well, nobody bothered to mention this fact to me until I come home from college for Thanksgiving and this strange woman is sitting at the table and my dad says, "Meet your sister." Man, that feels like the premise of a comedy movie. I hope you guys have connected over the years. Not yet, but when I was in college and my parents got divorced, my dad gave me all the information on what to do if he passes, told me where things are, and had me go to his bank to sign a document for access to his account after he dies. When we were leaving the bank, he told me, "Your mother is not who you think she is. Everything you need to know is in my deposit box." I have no clue what he could be talking about. He never elaborated, and my mom laughed it off when I told her about it. Guess I'll find out one day. When I was a kid, my dad accidentally killed a raccoon with his car. It had a young one with it that wasn't hit. So we adopted the baby raccoon. We adored it, but we were not at all equipped to care for it. There was no lock or cage that could stop this thing. It was very clever, strong and curious. It got into cupboards and ate food and trash, and we'd find its shit in the most random places. One day my dad sat me down and told me that my raccoon had gone to live on a farm. I was old enough to know what that meant, and I was heartbroken. Just a few years ago I was telling this story to my husband and my dad interrupted me and said that he literally actually gave my raccoon away to a work acquaintance of his that had a farm and a lot of wooded property. It had become so accustomed to humans it constantly broke into the man's house and ate his food and got enormously fat and lived a long honorary raccoon life. That one had a happy ending, except the poor kid thought her raccoon died for most of her life. There was story growing up about how a local prince wanted to marry me and offered things like cows for my hand in marriage. When my father passed away I went to my home country and met cousins I had not met before. Turned out the prince was the president's son and it wasn't an offer, it was a demand. We snuck out of the country because he was going to make me his wife. Bear in mind, I was a toddler. My mom filled in the backstory. The company my dad worked for had to smuggle us out of the country. My life was so exciting when I was 6. Edit, I want to be clear that the dude was not a pedo. This was going to be an arranged marriage for when I became of age. Can we at least get your home country's name? That would help us gauge this absurdity. Kenya. We moved to Canada so it really seems like the whole thing worked in our favor. I love Canada. I enjoy visiting Kenya, but it doesn't afford nearly the same level of independence for women. Plus, maple syrup. When I turned 18 I got a letter from a distant aunt and uncle wishing me a happy birthday. I hadn't seen them since I was a baby, but there's hundreds of pictures of them and me together when I was a baby. They used to babysit me a lot and take me on vacations with them. My mom told me they used me to smuggle things. I guess they said it was super easy to smuggle just about anything with a baby. At one point literally hiding cocaine in my diaper. You were an infant and you were smuggling cocaine. Hardcore. Mad lad smuggling cocaine since birth. That college fund that they were always talking about had 148.74 in it. My college fund was given to my aunt because she was going through a hard time and would definitely pay it back. It's been 20 years. I guess we just gave her thousands of dollars. Yeah, no. For funsies. Edit, for all the people advising me not to lend money to family. I know. Lord, do I know. But sadly, I was 10 at the time. Thanks for the concern. But I wasn't the one that gave it away. I worked at a bank. It was heartbreaking to see parents withdrawing money on a weekly basis from their child's college fund or the kid's own savings account. Week before little kid comes in with dad. Kid brings his piggy bank for us to run through the coin counter. Kid is happy he saved up almost 20. We open up a savings account for him. He is saving up for a news box. Next week dad isn't taking that money out to go next door and buy alcohol and cigarettes. It was sad to see. My partner's adoptive parents did that. He had saved over 10k, and when he went to make a withdrawal he had a little over a 100. Some parents just suck. My mother recently, I'm 52, told me that I have a half sibling out there somewhere. She had a child before she met my father and put him up for adoption. That secret was revealed to me not when I reached adulthood, but when my father passed away. When I was a baby, I had a baby doll which I loved. I still have that doll now that I'm 28. One day, a month about after my father's death, my mother told me that he had bought me 3 same baby dolls, and when the one I was using had gotten damaged, he secretly replaced her with a new one. He kept that secret as a present for the day of my wedding, along with all the baby dolls I had used all those years. He didn't make it to reveal it to me himself. Edit. Thanks guys very much for all the love I received from you. I'm sure that my father would be very happy to see that a lot of you act the same with your kids. My great uncle dad's uncle left me a large sum of money in trust that I was to receive at either age 25, graduated from college, or was honorably discharged from military service. He retired from military, whichever came first. I had no idea, and I'm glad I didn't. I joined the military right out of high school, and when I had my DD 214 in hand, my parents took me to a lawyer who laid it all out. Wow. Because of the enhanced GI Bill, I didn't have to touch a cent of it for tuition. I did use it to buy a house though. I miss my great uncle as much for his wisdom as his company. My grandma owned a bar when we were growing up, but also ran a huge bookie betting service from the bar. I didn't know until she passed away. It all made sense. The random police showing up, the robberies. My grandfather was a small business owner who everyone always thought of as extremely frugal due to growing up poor. Later we found out he spent a significant amount of money on charitable causes and helped a lot of his employees with financial, and in one case legal trouble. Positive secret. But it was definitely a secret. Edit splice. IDIEI. When I was a kid, I used to be friends with the next door woman, who was about 20 years old. To me she was a best friend, because she would read to me, or play with me, or take me to walks. One morning I woke up, and her dad was at my house, and gave me a painting she made. Then my parents told me my friend had to move to another city for work, and she left me the painting to remember her. Sometime later we moved to another city, but returned years after. When my dad died, I found the dad and sister were living there still. There I knew the truth. My friend had died on a car accident back then. But they decided to lie to me because they didn't want to hurt me. Edit. Thank you all for the upvotes and awards and sorry messages. I still have the painting, and I'm close to her sister, who is the only one left. When I was in my 20s, my mom revealed that my uncle, who was an ordained minister and my dad's older brother, helped arrange for my dad to get a sham marriage with another woman so he could get his green card prior to his relationship with my mom. It was a mildly mind-blowing revelation for me at the time. Edit. I've never bothered to do the math on the timeline of my past, but it's belatedly occurred to me that I might technically be the offspring of an extramarital affair. My mother did meet my father towards the tail end of his fake marriage after all. My mom regularly says things without thinking, and will reveal truths she forgot she told me otherwise about. When I was a kid, her boss would babysit me at her work, so she didn't have to get daycare. He would always put on the Horton Hears a Who VHS and let me look through his rock collection. He was great, and we thought of him like family. So when he passed from illness after we moved, I was very bummed. Years following, I was at my mom's house, and something reminded me of him. I mentioned him to my mom and she says, "Oh yeah, it was so crazy that he killed himself." You mean he was sick, right? No, he hung himself. You knew that? Nope, sure didn't, mom. Was very sad that someone who brought so much joy to our lives was going through such a struggle, and I never knew. When we went to go spend the weekend with aunt and uncle, mom and dad would do a little meth and clean the entire house from top to bottom in about 2 hours and spend the rest of the weekend being mom and dad. My dad and his cousin were both raised by my grandmother. I always thought that was odd, but never questioned it. Later learned that this was due to the fact that the cousin's mom murdered her husband grandmother's brother. Yes, that I had a half brother that was adopted soon after his birth. I met him when I was 13. My mom kind of had to tell me as he had become a policeman and was at our house to arrest my dad. He didn't keep in touch. I don't blame him. That my father was married before he met my mother and had a daughter. I do not and may never know the full story. My mother knows parts of it, but won't tell me much and just refers me to my father when I ask more about it. My father gets damn hysterical about it. I just don't know how much is true or embellished. Basically, my father moved away from his dysfunctional poor family in Florida to Texas, where he had a job lined up. He was out on his own and finally making money. Thought not much. I don't know how he met this woman, but they did get together and got married within a short time. She was quick to move in and share everything with him. She got pregnant and my presumed sister was born. My father loved her. In fact, I found pictures of the two of them together, and he was definitely happy. Then something happened. From his rantings, she took almost everything he earned, ran up a lot of credit, etc. When he called attention to it, her family started threatening him. To quote him, "They were the type of people who would show up to your work causing trouble and destroy your car as they left, just because they didn't like you." Now, by this time his daughter was almost 3 years old, and besides these supposed events, they had been living happily the entire time. Surprisingly, it was the woman who started the divorce. Her family had money, and my father who was alone did not, and they went hard on him in false accusations. My father was still fighting though, but when it looked like he might win, they claimed that his daughter was not his, and how the woman had always been sleeping with some other man. It was apparently convincing enough that my father believes that to be true to this day. I don't think there was ever a paternity test, but he apparently signed away any claim to be her father, and he wasn't ordered to pay any child support. According to my mother, his supposed daughter would show up at our house apartment alone occasionally, trying to talk with my father. Even once on my 9th birthday, though I don't remember her. However, that strikes me as a little odd, as she couldn't be more than 12 years old at the time. Someone would have had to known where we lived and driven her there. The first time I heard about any of this was when I was 24 years old and had just gone with my father to have our wills and other important documents updated. That is when he told me that if he died, someone may come claiming to be his daughter, but that it wasn't true, and instructed me on how to properly defend his estate from such an event. He wouldn't give me any details though, and I just dropped it. Then, about a year ago, the supposed daughter found and contacted me on Facebook. I didn't respond at first, because I thought it was some junk friend request, but they also contacted my mother, who verified that it was who they said they were. So, yeah, I had a short conversation with her through Messenger. She sounded honest enough, but I was cautious skeptical. That is when I brought it up to my father, who got hysterical and told me the rest of what I've relayed here. We are still friends on Facebook, but we kind of have an understanding that we may or may not be brother and sister. The only way we would know for sure is to have a sibling paternity test, which could let us know within a reasonable probability, but not for certain, unless my father participated too. And we pretty much decided that we couldn't put him through that, as he seems to be very traumatized by whatever happened back then. She is a mother and has a caring family now though. Supposedly, her mother remarried, then something happened to her mother and is no longer in her life. Her stepfather took her in, and she hasn't had any contact with her biological family. I suppose that is part of the reason why she wanted to get to know my father. He is the only one she knows that could be her biological father. When I was 18, my mom told me how my dad cheated on her with this woman named Kathy. I actually remembered Kathy when I was kid because my dad would take my brother and I to her house. She would buy us computer games and stuff, so we loved her at the time. I never understood why my mom hated her until I was older. Kathy ended up marrying my dad's best friend, As an adult I was never nice to her, and my dad would give me shit about it. I finally told him that I knew about her and that mom had told me everything. He just said oh, alright then. He never gave me shit again. The real reason they got divorced. My dad's a literal cuck and my mom wasn't into it. My mom met my dad in the military. I learned she joined the military to escape her town. Her best friend had killed himself and she dropped out of school. She started hanging out with his dad a lot and he convinced her to go back to high school and graduate. They became really close and his wife learned about it. At her graduation the wife finally met my mom and told her she was going to kill her for messing around with her husband. So my mom joined the military and didn't tell anyone until a couple years later, after she had met my dad and had me. I learned all this when I was like 25. I don't even know if my dad knew the whole story as they had never brought it up. Kind of. My sister decided to take a DNA test to get some insight into her ancestry. She got her results back and had 0% Italian, while our dad is 100% Italian. She didn't confront them right away and instead decided to wait until I took the test and get my results. 4 weeks later I got my results back and sure enough, I also had 0% Italian, and it actually identified my biological father, who isn't my dad. They revealed the secret when my sister intentionally let it slip that she was and I were waiting for our DNA results. I'm 38 and it never once came up. It wasn't even really for a bad reason. They had fertility issues and went to a sperm bank. I'm honestly not sure they ever would have said anything